everybody. Artistry and Finesse with you. Vital week in The Bachelorette this week. The determination of who will meet whose families. And Finesse, I think the lead tonight has to be Brooks, rising like a phoenix from the ashes. Really out of nowhere, out of maybe the most boring date of the season so far. Brooks emerges as possibly someone Des is in love with. Where did this come from?
Well, there's a lot of stuff we have to talk about when it comes to Brooks, because there's a lot of different things going on in this episode. Now, I'll go back to the beginning, because I think that's where we should start. It was an atrocious date. He rides shotgun in a baby car, in a little smart car, and the whole time they go to the top of this mountain, it's what we wrote about in the book. It's, I'm glad you're here. I'm really glad you're here with me. It's so great that I get to share this with you, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, then at the end of the episode, you find out that she's in love with him. Where did this come from? I mean, what is Brooks doing behind the scenes that we don't know about? How did we get here? I'm confused. I knew he was a contender. I didn't see it coming based on that first date. I didn't think he did.
There's a lot that's confusing. I'm not going to pretend like I saw this coming in any way, shape, or form. I said to Mrs. Artistry about halfway through this date that I wasn't even paying attention to. I think Brooks might go home tonight because there was just nothing there. And on top of everything else, just when you thought that it couldn't get any less promising, they talk to each other about coming up with adjectives to describe the space between like and love and proceed to list a string of verbs.
Well, I mean, that's maybe one of their connections, is that they don't play by conventional grammar rules.
Grammar. Or lack thereof.
Right, those don't apply to them. When you're in love, you can say whatever you want, whenever you want. It doesn't matter.
There are no grammar boundaries.
And when she says about Brooks, she said, and I wrote this down, I'm falling in love with Brooks. I'm thinking to myself, okay, here's an example of a woman who's just saying stuff because it can be edited and sound good. Because what does it mean to be falling in love with somebody? Aren't we all falling in love with each other all the time in the same way that we're all dying, technically? So it's like it just comes out of nowhere, and I feel a little bit cheated by it because it's dishonest on the part of Chris Harrison and the producers. Because my notes from this date, here's what I wrote. I wrote, Brooks is so boring. Take a risk, dude. Like, what is your hardship? He said, I think he might have said something like his dad isn't around, or he is close with his family, or he isn't close with his family. I had no idea what he's talking about. His hardship
was he was feeling pensive. That was his hardship.
Right. That is no hardship at all. And if you're looking for a reason to find that, if you're looking for a reason why this isn't over yet, I think it starts and ends with that. That he has no hardship. He doesn't have diabetes. He doesn't have diabetes like Michael had. He doesn't have, Drew's issue with the alcoholism, or if maybe that's Chris, I don't know. But it's looking, maybe it's a little too perfect for Brooks right now.
You think this is a setup?
Well, look, we've never seen it revealed this early that someone is in love with someone else, right? That the bachelor or bachelorette is in love. So how could it not be a setup? How could they not be setting us up for Chris to come in, swoop at the end, come down and get the final rose?
That's what you would think, right? I mean, the way that they teamed up on the poem, it was really like they really both put themselves out there on that poem. Like the fact that wasn't edited. Like we saw their whole poem that they did together, which really was taking a big risk because it wasn't a good poem.
You know what troubled me most about that date was after they write the poem and they put it in the bottle, Chris throws the bottle underhanded into the ocean. What kind of man throws a message in a bottle underhanded into the ocean? And is that a warning sign for Des that maybe he's not always going to be there to protect her heart? Because, I hate to say it, but real men throw overhand. Real men throw poems into the ocean overhand.
Let me tell you something. If you had been paying closer attention, you would not have been surprised by the underhand toss, because you should have seen it coming as soon as Chris said, "We are going to be chilling boat style." What kind of a man says, "We're going to be chilling boat style"?
I don't know. He said, there was something else that he said, and I'm trying to see if I wrote it down. I don't know, but I wonder, with his poems and all this stuff, is Chris a one-trick pony? What does he go to if he doesn't have the poem?
I don't know, but I think that Chris was the one guy.
I got it. I know what he said. He said, we're going to be chilling boat style. We got some vino.
We're going to be drinking vino.
If you're a man, you don't call wine vino.
No, that was just all kinds of disastrous.
He's saying he's chilling boat style. He's throwing poems underhanded into the ocean. What are you doing, Chris? This is why Brooks didn't have a strong date, but after she sees Chris, it's I got to go back to Brooks.
Yeah, I think that Chris was the most obviously over the top infatuated with Des. The look on the guy's face, he's clearly there's nothing disingenuous. He's right there. He's feeling it. He's loving her. But I think it's almost alienating for him at this point.
The other thing that they did that I really want to get your take on, because, longtime fans will remember when Ashley was the Bachelorette and there was a really passionate sunscreening going on between her and Ben.
Sure.
And kissing and all that. And I sort of fell for that. And you told me, and you told everyone who listens, don't be fooled by an overly affectionate sunscreening. It doesn't mean what you think it means. And there was some sunscreening going on between Des and Chris, and I'm really curious as to your take on that. Is it a sign of things to come? What did you think of the sunscreening that went down?
I don't see the physical chemistry there. I think you have to be careful with these people, because sometimes what they think isn't really true. They may have moments. They may have just, sparks, just brief glimpses of a connection, but you need to look just beneath the surface. You can't listen to what they say. Chris said at one point, "We write poetry together, and it's not even awkward." Yes, it was awkward. It was one of the more awkward things imaginable. It depends on your definition of the word awkward. And Chris is not the perspective that you need to be listening to. That may strike you as somewhat counterintuitive, because he's there, he's in it. But you need to trust yourself as an expert on this show. You need to trust your instincts, not Chris's, your instincts.
You're saying that what they say isn't truth, but what you feel is truth.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Well, I don't know who could argue with that at this point. You've certainly proven yourself.
I think I've proven myself over and over again. And I knew, my wife will tell you something different, but she's not on this podcast. She's not welcome on this podcast. She'll tell you that I didn't see this coming, but I knew, and I think you knew, I think we both knew last week, that Michael would be the one sent home tonight.
It was obvious. He was a non-entity, a non-contender. And really, this episode never should have happened, because it was so obvious that he wasn't getting the ticket to hometowns. He has no redeeming qualities. He's not particularly handsome. I don't know what was he doing on the show tonight. What was his purpose?
He's irritating. Michael's irritating, and I want him I think he should check on that federal prosecutor job. Just hard for me to understand how he could still have it. I mean, how could you walk like into a courtroom after this experience? How could you go in front of a jury?
Well,
is that part of the voir dire?
Yeah, every jury selection, it's going to be like, do you recognize?
It has to be, right?
It has to be. Do you recognize anybody in this courtroom? It's like, yeah, I saw that guy cry and call his mom on The Bachelor.
He called his mother. He called his mother, and his mother said, "Here we go again." After he got dumped.
What I loved about it, the calling of the mother, was right before the call. He said that bringing Des home would have made his mother's life. Like her whole life would have been made by meeting Des.
Oh, that was so unfortunate. It really, really was.
I know.
But he's just an irritant, Michael. He's an irritant. He's so combative.
He's irredeemable. And if Des is going to look critically at the decisions she made on this season, she needs to really go back and figure out how it was that Michael lasted this long. Because he didn't deserve to be there. He really didn't deserve to be there.
It's a little bit of an embarrassment for Des. What's your take on Drew? I mean, he's got a pretty good story. He's got a mentally handicapped sister.
That's huge. I don't know that we've seen that before.
Who gets excited at the thought of him finding love, which is a really good storyline. I have to hand that to him. He's really earnest.
I think he's a contender against lesser competition than Brooks. I mean, after what she said about Brooks, how does anyone other than Chris maybe compete? I don't know that Drew. I think in another world, in another season, Drew has a chance, and maybe he could even be the next Bachelor. I could see him as a legitimate next Bachelor, but I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he wins. I think he gets to the fantasy suite, but I don't think he gets out of the fantasy suite what Brooks and Chris get out of the fantasy suite.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when you look at Drew, he just screams effort. He's trying so hard. Every part of his body is like tensed up. I just don't think that's a winning equation. And I think it's very telling that there's one person we haven't mentioned tonight, and that's Zach. Zach has absolutely no chance in this thing. You agree?
No chance. You saw it in the previews, which I accidentally watched for next week. It's his family, like, being weird. It reminds me of that guy Constantine, when his dad was doing the Make It Rain thing, like with he had the whole big Greek family, and his dad stirred dollar bills around. It's just silly. She has a nice time, but there's nothing there. There's no future there.
So you accidentally saw the previews, you say. That means you saw Dez's brother back in action.
Well, he has to come back. You have to get his sign-off before you can get Dez's heart. I know that she toasted during the Drew and Zach go-kart race. She toasted to Racing for My Heart. And I don't think you can get the checkered flag unless you get the brother's blessing. And that's the blessing that really matters. Like, we go into hometowns next week. You and I are steadfast believers that the blessing is everything. The blessing tells you everything you need to know about who's going to win. But in this case, I think the bigger blessing is from Dez's brother rather than the suitors' families. Do you agree?
Can you see Dez's brother actually bestowing the blessing in an overt way, or does he give his blessing in some other respect? Does he give it by just grudgingly sharing a dinner with somebody without assaulting them verbally or physically? How does he give his blessing?
I think you're not going to get an affirmative blessing, but I think the absence of confrontation can be interpreted as a blessing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So if somebody can get through a meeting with him without a confrontation, that's a blessing.
So who do you see getting out of hometowns and into the final three?
I see Drew and Chris and Brooks. What about you?
Yeah, me too. I don't think Zach has a real shot.
No, not at all.
I think his family's going to be super bizarre. And that will outweigh the fact that Chris's dad apparently gives Des an upside-down massage of some sort.
I thought that was Zach's dad. Is that Chris's dad?
I think it was Chris's dad.
Well, time will tell. We'll find out next week.
Time will tell.
I want to say, before we go, I know we're at the end here, but I just want to say one thing. At the beginning of the episode, we saw Jackie, Leslie, and Catherine from the last season of The Bachelor.
Great
They were
point.
in Sean's season. And I understand why you bring a Catherine on to give her advice, because she won the show. Someone's going to have to explain to me what credibility a Leslie and a Jackie has to be evaluating anybody on this show. They're discarded losers. They didn't
I want
do
to tell you,
anything.
I'm not going to be that person.
They didn't do
I'm not
anything.
gonna be able to explain that.
That's like bringing next season. Are you going to bring Michael back to advise Drew on who's there for the right reasons?
Yeah, why don't you just bring a James or a Mikey?
It's just these guys are losers. Like
Makes
Leslie
no
and
sense.
Leslie and Jackie, you had your moment. It's gone. Get out of my life.
Yeah, we expect better. So next week we're going to Hometowns, baby. Can't wait.
It's what it's all
Know
about.
It's what it's all about. It's what we've worked so hard for to get to this point. All right, thank you for joining us, everybody. Until next time, the Big Kibitz.
Time to kibitz, time to kibitz, time to kibitz. It's the big kibitz. Come and kibitz with the big kibitz. Ooh, big kibitz. Big. It's the big kibitz. Come and kibitz with the big kibitz. Ooh.